prominently up here. We cleared up the information on the board, and a lot of the information on the website has moved down to the bottom of the site, so it's like even on the home page where it's the introduction to Parks and Rec, it's down on the bottom of the page instead of up at the top telling you about who we are. So,
did we ever finish the bio form for this page?
no.
So these are just suggested. These have not been approved, right, by anybody?
Right, and nothing's been approved.
I mean, this content right here.
No, it's not been approved.
How?
It's not going.
No, I understand that. I'm just asking about the bio form.
Meetings, I wanted to have more explanation of meetings, what the public's rights are, what the notice are, how publics can have things added to the agenda, and even that you guys would have to go over and agree on it. If the public is allowed to, in some way, suggest agenda items. I broke down the various committees so people could see who was on each committee and who's on it, and their schedules, because that's kind of nowhere on the website right now.
Was there a, did you guys keep like a running list of the modifications that you made? Or,
Oh, God, no.
no, it was too many to keep a running list?
It was too many.
You know, basically, MPOC took this on as an ad hoc committee, and Tia and Kathy and I think Peter, I was not.
Chief Sasso?
Were involved in discussing the
I wasn't on the ad.
You weren't, the potential content. It's completely different in many, many ways, and there's a lot of really good ideas here. It's just a matter of whether or not we can implement any of these, because our webmaster had the conversation with the ad hoc committee yesterday about some of the difficulties in bringing this to fruition.
Is it technical difficulties? Is
Yeah.
it structural difficulties on the website itself? Hi.
Hello, Mr. Archie is your webmaster.
Web helper, or
Right.
webmaster?
Yeah, I mean, and I've glanced at Tia's PDF and so on. The basic deal is, first of all, the site was built some years ago, but it was built with a thing called SSI, it's just server-side includes, and it allows like an easy way to maintain the site. So there are elements, the navigation bar, the footer, that are throughout the site, so you don't, when you make a change across the site, you don't have to change 100 pages, you change one thing. And it's built with that technology. So if we bring this new content we can bring it in, but we can't just take Tia's new files, we would have to take chunks of it and put it into the new site, if that makes sense. So that we don't lose the ability to at least maintain what we have. So we couldn't just take what Tia has and throw it out there in 5 minutes. But on the other hand, there's a lot of things which would be quite simple to do, and that we can take up.
So just to be clear, so I guess I'm probably confused because I'm seeing what appears to be our website that appears to have been directly modified.
No.
It wasn't. And Tia, you did, I don't understand this world at all, so I'm using language I don't.
I rebuilt the entire website
On a different
computer.
platform?
It's not live. It's not
But
live.
it's like on a different web design platform
Yes.
of some kind?
Yeah.
Okay, but so you took some of the images and some of like the font and the Monterey Road partnership looks like the original, but you just, okay.
Oh, yeah, I used all the original files, although I did clean up a lot of the images and
Okay.
the contrast and stuff in some of the pictures.
And then what you're saying is that it wouldn't just be like, oh, Tia, we couldn't just say, Tia, we love it, thank you so much for all your donated time and energy, go home, and like just move it over to our existing.
Right, because
site
Tia
structure.
didn't grab the source files from me, she got it from the web. Unfortunately, you have it all put together,
Mhm.
as opposed to the different separate pieces that we
Right.
had that run it. So we could take this now, but then it would be very hard to maintain it from here forward. And I do recommend that the site being as old as it is, as I mentioned to Peter, this is a great time to clean up code and to bring it to current W3C standards. Some simple things, for example, is ADA compliance. You separate style now, so the site doesn't comply with that, I know. So now would be a great time to implement some of what Tia has, and we could also do it at the same time of also fixing the code on the site, and do that within our regular maintenance budget.
And so that's what I'm recommending is that, or we're recommending is that we do as much as we can before the end of this fiscal year, getting David and Tia to work together to implement as much as they can within sort of fix-it type things.
I think it's important also to add here, Peter, if you don't mind, well, I think we need to identify the things that, A, can be changed, should be changed, and that we're willing to have changed between now and the end of this fiscal year, rather than simply saying Tia and David can meet and go through it. I think we need to be aware.
Well, sure. They would come up with a task list and say, okay, here are the things that can be accomplished. And then, yes, we would bring that before the board, say, well, what that means.
Yeah, like I prioritize a list of changes that are what we call the low-hanging fruit, the most obvious, important changes, with some agreement as to what we can get accomplished, and then just prioritize them and we'll talk about it.
And then for next year, next budget cycle, in the maintenance, or the contract with David, we could talk about actually spending some more money on enhancing the website functionally, putting in pieces that maybe some of this, but also maybe some of the things that David talked about, the ADA compliance and
Can I ask you a question, David? It's, obviously, would get too granular if you're like making these changes page by page, and then you're going to have different people going, oh, God, no, that can't be there, or are you going to basically clone the site and then do it, and then
What I would, there's two things on that. Yeah, one, I would love to be, having worked with the MRRPD for quite a while, have it very clear who I'm reporting to on this project, whether it's I report directly to Peter as we do the work, for example, and all the work perhaps gets done on the development server. So I'm working with Peter, but I have to deal with 10 different things as we're making the changes, and then maybe at the end of when it's produced and finished, then maybe the board, I don't know, looks at and gives the final, okay, now you've got board approval to make this live. Obviously there may be some simple things that I could put in a recommendation. There might be some typographical errors that Tia's found that need to be put up immediately, and we fix all those things immediately. And but as long as I have clear direction, it'd be nice for me and easier for me to work.
So what I'm saying is, would the board and staff, as this process has happened, so you're not wasting your time, would we have access to that site to look at it?
Yeah, with pleasure. We could do that under a password protected area,
right,
so that you've got something that could be checked and finally approved. That would be no problem to do that. I'd be happy to do it.
Tia, did you change any of the text?
Yes.
And how would we know which text that you changed and where and when you changed it, did you gather that information from somebody or just changed it because that's how you thought it should be changed, or?
I did changes that I thought that's how it should be changed.
Well, that's the kind of information that we're really going to have to compare and realize, to have someone who's just changed the text of the website to have it be accurate and make sure that it's what falls under, the basis of the board and what the district represents.
For instance, on the home page, it didn't, it only talked about visitors. It didn't mention the residents, so I put that in there.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Make it more inclusive.
But I was mostly referring, like, did you come up with a brand new paragraph of text somewhere? That kind of text changes.
Except that I was having to write stuff for the explanation of these are the meetings, this is how they're grouped, this is where they meet.
And that stuff is all stuff we can check. And of course, you'll have to request from the people who you plan on putting bios up, and if they want to be, whether it's board or staff or volunteers, and get all that stuff.
Now, is there a way for any of the changes that you made to either highlight them or bold them or something, just so that we can see, what the changes are? Or is it too late?
No, the easiest way to do it is to look at the two side by side and just go page by page.
I think one thing that makes what Gene's asking complicated or difficult is that a lot of the change would be navigational. So it's to get to a certain, to find out a certain piece of information, we may be changing something to make it easier to get there so that the navigation through the system is simplified.
I'm more concerned, like what Kathy brought up, the text. You know, any text that was changed, is there a way to highlight it so that we can see what the changes are? If something was added or something.
Yeah, but certainly if we're talking page by page, yes, if there's a such and such a page and all we did was change the text, then of course you could print both screens and print both pages and see what the text changes.
That's not highlighted, not highlighted. I didn't highlight anything.
It is
Cumbersome
It's
and
cumbersome to do that, and I know my mind starts, I didn't start going through that one. So I've helped redesign crappy websites into magnificent ones with other organizations. So first, Tia, I want to thank you, because you put a lot of work and thought into this, and I know people will immediately go into things they like, yeah, what is that? They say what they don't like. And I just first want to say you've done an absolutely beautiful job setting up something for us to start a really important conversation.
I was embellished that I didn't figure out that he was using a different system.
I want to say thank you, but and there might be things that we're going to tweak about it, but what you've done is creative and thoughtful and thorough, and I'm personally grateful for the time that you've invested in that.
And the information is, I mean, I put a lot more information in here, like under the programs, I was doing bios on the instructors, these are the times they meet, this is how much the class costs, whereas before, those classes were just in the Google Calendar, and there really was no more information when you click on, get more information.
Yeah, so the district has had a long time without any staff or any community members stepping up to volunteer to do that work, and you stepped in and you did a lot of it without asking, us having to ask you to do it as a volunteer. So there's a lot of work that went into it. I want to acknowledge that. I think that I'm hearing the concerns about individual words being changed and structure, and everybody doesn't want their picture up there, their bio up there.
I would never, ever presume, in fact, what I was planning on doing is sending each one of you your little section of the information we need and the photograph that I've already got, that I found online. And please, feel free to change them. But that would give you an idea of the scale of the picture, and I'm kind of hoping for headshots.
So where I'm going with what I'm saying is I think those changes are probably best done with a group of people who want to be the ones really delving into those details and reporting back to the board. Here's our final draft, of the website before it goes live, and just have it. And I don't know if it belongs only in the marketing and public outreach committee, or if if anybody else wants to be engaged in that process. But I think a group of people coming up with that final draft together, not us having to try to do side-by-side comparisons of what got changed, but empowering a group of people to sit down and say, come back to us with your best recommendations, and then let's pick it apart again together as a board before it goes live. So that's just my suggestion. I don't think we all need to be in every detail.
I agree, but
yeah.
wasn't there a website ad hoc committee on top of the MPOC, and you guys met a couple of times or at least once? So could that committee, the ad hoc committee, be the one that just focuses mostly on the website only, and MPOC can do other things besides the website?
Right. No, we can still do that.
Depending on how much time you invested in the whole meeting, you can get in, get done, make the changes, and only have that ad hoc committee stand for a couple meetings.
And for someone who's been on the MPOC side of it, and I've actually spent a couple hours sitting down with Tia, and I'd say 90% of the changes are very positive and in the right direction, but there just needs to be some other eyes on it, some other stuff that we need to kind of tweak a little bit, but it's certainly a huge improvement.
My only other thought, I guess, that I have is, so join the e-newsletter. I love e-newsletters. People subscribe to them. People then read them. They're fantastic. We don't have one, and I would then ask who's going to write them. Right?
Oh, I wasn't thinking it was going to be, no, this is e-news list. This is not going to be a news
It's
list.
not a monthly promised newsletter.
No,
It's getting
like,
their email address.
hey,
so
guess
they can
what's
blast
coming up? The car show's coming.